Sounds
Hello,
good.
everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I have Mr. Weisskopf, aka the ETF Professor, and he is a senior portfolio manager at Tidal Finance Group. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Awesome. Awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I guess the first question is, I know Tidal is really into ETFs. So what is your role for Tidal? What do you do?
Yeah, so let's take a step back a bit. I've been in the ETF industry for, geez, almost 25 years. That's why I'm tagged as the ETF professor on Twitter. My role at Tidal is, as a senior portfolio manager, I'm responsible for a number of ETFs specifically. Um, Block is one of them. Then there's, of course, the Nance and Cruise. I speak in tickers, so my apologies. The subversive funds, Nance and Cruise, and we've got one more coming out. Probably have to hold off on talking about, and then also have the Fire Community ETFs, FIRI and FIRS. And we'll talk about all of these ETFs if you're interested. At the firm, which frankly is all about inspiring folks to launch ETFs. ETFs are all about democratization of investments, and we've got about 200 ETFs across about 30 billion in assets. And what we're trying to accomplish is, offering the opportunity for other folks to launch ETFs on our platform as a white label provider and hopefully help them grow and reach other people. And we partner with everybody on the street. And obviously Defiance is one of them. That's how we met through that firm. So thanks for having me. Looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
That's great. So, as a portfolio manager, are you really in charge of helping structure exactly what goes into ETFs? Is it talking mostly about equities or what are different kind of securities that you're packaging into these ETFs? Um, what is your take on that? What is your role in that?
Well, as you know, people forget. I think way too often. I'm the guy who always, by the way, talks about how structure matters. And we can go into that at another point. But they forget that ETFs aren't just passive. Listen, there are some ETFs that are free, and that's wonderful. There's some ETFs that are 5, 10 basis points in cost. And that's awesome. Don't get me wrong. Those are passive ETFs. They're following a very specific index. And if you know how to use them, they're wonderful. And they're dominated by, the biggest firms out there. But ETFs, they're just a wrapper. And in my particular case, in the case of Block particularly, um, it's just the wrapper on a fund that is investing in the infrastructure around blockchain and digital assets. So we're doing equity selection around what's happening with the infrastructure around digital assets, aka crypto, as people like to
Mm.
refer to them.
That's very interesting. So you guys are taking more of an active approach on that. And crypto, I mean, I'd love to learn more about crypto because it's just kind of the big new thing. And I haven't really been able to look into that much. So I guess maybe taking a step back, you said you've been in the ETF world for 20 plus years. So how did you start your career? What was your career trajectory kind of? Did you know you wanted to go into finance? Did you know you wanted to go into ETF specifically, or how did the path unfold for you?
I was very fortunate, frankly, to have a mentor who gave me a number of internships. Whether it was going to West Virginia and helping them drill gas rigs or work in a gold mining facility, right? There were about 6 different internships that I did, but my background was always in finance. And I came back to New York where I live after graduating from college in Colorado and worked for my mentor, where I learned about venture capital, learned about hedge funds, learned about commodities, learned about activism. And when I was your age, I got to learn about how you can have an impact in finance. And then I went back to business school and learned about marketing. And that's a whole different perspective on things. There's, how you reach people, which is marketing. There is finance, which is how you finance that marketing program. And then, of course, there's sales, right? And everybody's got to be selling at some level. So it's a little bit of my background.
So you think that it was really good that you had a mentor that kind of brought you into the working world, and would you suggest that people, who are younger who want to have more experience, that they should find a mentor like that? You think that was really helpful for you?
It made a world of difference to me. Absolutely. It's hard to find a mentor. And you've got to connect with them. They've got to connect with you, right? So yeah, if you can find one, go for it.
All right. Uh, So, kind of on that topic, what would you say a day of your life is like? I know a lot of people are talking about work-life balance nowadays, but it's also important to understand that, some of the greatest, most successful people, they're going 100%. They're committed on a lot of stuff. So sometimes they don't even have this concept of work-life balance, or do you even need work-life balance, right? If you're trying to pursue your goals and you want to put your all into it. So, and I guess in your position right now, how is your work-life balance like? And maybe looking back, how was it back then? And do you think that it should have been a big concern? Or do you think that, sometimes you have to make sacrifices to achieve what you want to achieve?
Oh, Evan, you threw a lot at me. Um,
Yeah, so I guess we'll go to the first one.
no, 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 no. Let's break it down for a second. Okay. First of all, Ethan, you got to do what you enjoy and what your aptitudes drive you to being strong at, right? If you're great at math, you shouldn't necessarily be an English major. As for work-life balance, I'm not a great example of it because I love what I do. Um, whether it's analyzing a balance sheet or just speaking to people about their dreams, that's what I enjoy doing. And I'm one of these people who enjoys being on the cutting edge of change. I can't say I'm a disruptor, but I enjoy being involved with disruptors. That's got a lot of different challenges, right? I was early on the ETF space. When I got into the ETF space, there were roughly 200 ETFs, and there were roughly 200 billion in ETFs. And now we're in the trillions and thousands of ETFs. That was cool for me. Today, I'm pivoting further into blockchain and crypto, and it's a little bit of the Wild West. And now, everybody's like, it's super cool, and the regulations are about to change, which I think is probably going to open things up even further. Now, I somewhat forget, frankly, that you're just in high school, and I keep on thinking about you in college. I love that you're asking the right questions about your career right now. It's incredibly important. And you have to think about the work-life balance because what makes you happy may be different than what makes me happy. And it isn't necessarily, not to sound preachy, about money, right? It's how you're allocating your time and the quality of life that you want to achieve. Now, I don't want to pitch product to you, but we've become pretty aware around the fire community. Are you familiar with the fire community?
No, I'm not. Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, the fire community is something that maybe we all should aspire to as entrepreneurs. The fire community goes back 25, 30 years, maybe even longer for some. And it's about financial independence, retire early. And retirement doesn't necessarily mean that you sit on the beach and enjoy yourself and you do nothing. Retirement may just mean that you're financially independent and you can choose how you allocate your time and what you want to spend that time to make you happy. And I've got two kids, a little bit older than you. Well, one's 25 and one's 20. So, or God, Will's gonna kill me, 21. And I wish they embraced, if I had to look back, a little bit more discipline around those goals. And that requires you mentioned the word sacrifice. That requires you to step back a bit and maybe save money, put it aside so that it can compound for a longer period of time so that in 20 years you have that independence. Maybe you start another business. Maybe you just work in the gig economy. Maybe you retire because that's what you want to do, or maybe you just enjoy your family in a different way. So I think I've answered your question. Happy to drill deeper on anything further on that.
Yeah, no, that was a great response. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, sometimes you have to make sacrifices in the beginning. If you want to, be the fire, you want to retire early, not necessarily, sitting on a beach, but have that financial freedom and that flexibility. Do you think financial world in general, I guess for students who are still kind of on the fence, do I see these private equity, venture capital fund managers and whatnot, and they're making millions and millions of years a year. But they start off somewhere like, investment banking, sales and trading, which can be really stressful. You can work a lot of hours. So, um, do you think that it should be something that you're afraid of, the hours working? I mean, I know you said that um, if you love what you're doing, then that's a really important drive. But do you think that's something that should phase you or not?
Um, so I had this conversation a bit with one of my colleagues, and he goes, "Well, what is work?" Right? Is work the contribution to revenues for the firm that you're at, or is it what you enjoy? And they're two different things necessarily, right? Um, because at the end of the day, it ends up being a metrics by which that you're measured in terms of revenues or your wages, right, on what you earn. So I'm probably making the question a little bit more complicated than it should be. The message that I'm trying to get at is do what you love. If you're stressed as an investment banker, that's okay. That's the path you chose, right? And that can be a wonderful path. But on the same token, if you're going for the investment banking role, you're going for the process of just trying to earn a ton of money. And that's what's driving you, which is great. Now, if you're working equally as hard with, I would argue, maybe more stress as an entrepreneur, you're taking a different path that may not, earn you the traditional way of big money, but you're doing that because you're excited by the independence. I think also, frankly, a lot of jobs have a certain level of sex appeal. Um, I'm an investment banker at XYZ company. And you know what? I'm the 1% of the 1% that got that opportunity. And that makes me smart. Nah, not really. It doesn't, you know. You may be smart doing that, but it isn't necessarily the smartest role for you as an individual. Very often I find that people look at, and I mean no disrespect to lawyers, It's a wonderful profession. But very often I find that young people go back to school and become a lawyer because they're like, I like structure around being a lawyer. Well, you might get paid a lot of money being a lawyer, and that's great. But is that what really drives you and turns you on? Because those are the 80-hour days. And if you're not enthusiastic about what you're doing, you may end up being an unhappy lawyer.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Um, so looking at your position as a obviously a senior position, a senior role, what do you think it takes to be successful in your position?
I'm one of the folks who eats what they kill in a lot of respects. What makes me successful in my role is obviously alpha in the portfolios that I'm responsible for. And sometimes it's taking on outside of those portfolios an idea and helping that company achieve their goals and benefiting by capitalism in the purest sense, right? Putting a little bit of my time towards advising some of the companies on how they can succeed in maybe a similar way to an investment banker, but without the compensation structure. I enjoy that area and have had success with that, but it's a different level of pressure, I would say.
Yeah. So looking back, I guess, is there anything you would change? It doesn't necessarily have to be something that was negative. But do you think that there was an instance where, maybe I should have pivoted here, or maybe I should have uh, taken this job opportunity or talked to this person, went to that event? Is there anything that you would have liked to change looking back at your career?
I've had a wonderful career involved in ETFs, and I got some things right, some things wrong. What I got wrong was the fact that ETFs were just about, quote, the democratization of investment access. That's what turned me on. I love the idea 25 years ago of being involved with ETFs because they were transparent. They were about new types of investing, right? And that was all good. That was great, and it was right. And ETFs are all about, tax efficiency, all about access to different strategies, and um, a wonderful, wonderful thing. What I got wrong on it was ETFs need to be marketed. Just because you launch a great idea, and by the way, has anybody ever launched a bad ETF idea? Not intentionally, I promise you that. But a lot of them, you know, even with the best of returns and the best of intentions, have launched as entrepreneurs, a great idea wrapped in an ETF, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked because it hasn't gathered the assets. And that's something that I missed and I'm driven to try and solve for because it's important that great ideas are recognized. Um, there's no magic formula. You still have to do a grind. But if I have one singular regret with my career is I haven't solved that problem for the ETF world, right?
So focusing on the marketing aspect.
Marketing is
Uh,
really important, really, really important and really hard. So
all right. So I know we've talked a lot about your own career and your career path, your trajectory. For people like myself, or maybe a little older, who are entry level, they're just applying, I don't know, if say title, right? And their resume lands on your desk, or you're going to interview them, what do you think stands out in an applicant, entry level that is it maybe the school that they went to, or what hard skills, what soft skills, or do they matter? Or what do you want to see in their character when they're face to face with you in an interview?
Geez. It's how they interview somebody. What can I tell you? No, I mean, I think it isn't the school for me personally that matters so much. Um, it's often the questions that they ask. Um, do they frankly show up on time? Um, I look at my son who's graduating from Elon in May, June. And I know he's going to be a sponge for somebody, right? Somebody is going to hire him with the expectation that he'll take the directive, he'll accomplish the goal that's assigned to him, and candidly, he'll show up on time and stay late, and he'll do all that. Um, I think those are the qualities that I'm looking for, and that basically amounts to dedication. You you asked about sacrifice. Um, when you're, first starting out, you have to be prepared to make sacrifices of your time. And that's in exchange for the experience you're getting. Um, and I think you have, frankly, some of those qualities based on our conversations and your engagement in trying to get me to do this interview. I appreciate that. And your contribution to your group,
Thank you.
your
Thank you.
community.
Thank you. So is there anything you could do, say, in your resume that would show that? Maybe do you also, on top of that, do you look for leadership? Any soft skills, any specific, maybe hard skills? I know if someone is really interested, I know you're an expert on ETFs or in crypto, and people want to go into that. Is there any like hard skills, any I don't know, workshops that they could attend that would make them stand out, or you're really still more focused on how they can present themselves as someone who's going to work hard?
Listen, the tone of your questions are great. And I say that because you're curious as a human being. Um, when I'm looking for somebody to meet with who has your skill set and your experience, it's about your curiosity, and because that's what you bring to the table. And to a large degree, it's the freshness of how you view the world that for somebody like me is a bit inspiring, right? I'm excited about AI. I'm excited about blockchain. I'm excited about technology and crypto and decentralized finance and how the world's about to change. That comes from, your generation too, right? And I would expect if somebody's sitting in front of me, they are also excited about these things. And because if they're not going to be a good fit for the world that I'm involved with.
See. I mean, I guess that goes back to if you're just starting out, I guess maybe people view, they know that you're not going to have that much experience or knowledge, but if they see that curiosity, they see that you want to learn, I guess that's your main selling point as someone who's entry level, right? So that's a good point. That's really interesting.
Yeah, no, but listen, I've in my career I've made some mistakes in hiring. And the mistakes that I've made in hiring folks have been because they disappointed me in when they showed up, um, in how they presented themselves for a meeting. You've got a nice suit on. I probably should be wearing a nice suit too. It matters, right? First impression matters, and I appreciate your time as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming again. So we're kind of nearing the final questions. Um, but I guess you've said a lot of great things and you have a lot of pieces of advice, but is there specifically one? Maybe it's like a motto or a quote. Maybe you can go a little philosophical here, but what is one piece of advice that you would give to high school or college students wanting to pursue this career? So what is something that they could be doing right now, getting that internship or, starting that club or something. What do you think they could be doing in this moment?
Well, first off, two things. Please, reach out to me. I'm afraid I'm going to get a lot of resumes, but reach out to me on LinkedIn, and on Twitter. And the advice, it's going to sound like a broken record when you get to know me. Structure matters. I talk about it all the time. Structure matters in the way of where you live. Is it in a city? What city? What country? Is it your religion? Whatever the religion it is, that will formulate your life, right? It's whether you're all about, um, working at a big company with a big name, or it's about working for yourself in the gig economy. These are decisions that are within your control that basically talk about how structure matters. And I think that's super important. And I think when you think about how structure matters, it also helps you break down a problem, right? What is the problem? What is the solution? And how is it structured, to solve that problem, whatever it is, right? But you got to like put it on a piece of paper and break it all down. So my message to you is structure matters.
That's interesting. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but saying like you want to plan out the steps that you want to take. Do you see yourself doing this? Do you see yourself doing that? And then really focusing on the little steps towards that big goal. Is that correct, or is that what you're saying
Um,
with the structure?
well, if you ask my wife of 27 years, hope I didn't get that wrong, Allison. Anyway, I'm very big into resolutions. So yeah, you can say I've got a resolution and then break it down how I'm going to achieve that resolution. Sure,
Mm,
that's fine.
see. All right. I guess I know this isn't exactly one of the questions that I sent an email, but I'm really interested in the crypto world, the ETF world. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what do you see in cryptocurrency? Uh, how do you think that professionals are feeling about this? Obviously, I think a lot of young people are excited about crypto and AI and all these new things. I know a lot of my friends, they look at like trendline trading on like Instagram or social media, and they see the very surface of investing and saying crypto. I bought Bitcoin at 100,000 and it went up to 110,000, but I don't really know why it went up. I just like crypto. So what is the investing world talking about? What are they saying about the future of cryptocurrency? And you can also talk about ETFs as well.
Structure matters, my friend, and you're asking multiple questions again. So in the way of crypto, what I would say is people forget crypto is all about the science and the programming tools, right? Around how decentralization really works. And people are very often excited, especially young people, around the price action. Get in early. I hear Joe says it's going higher, but not really understanding what the problem that token or coin or blockchain is solving, right? You have to think through what the problem is. Otherwise, it is absolutely going to be a Ponzi scheme. And whether you're investing $50 or $500,000, it's meaningful to you when you make money or you lose money. So you have to develop that process by which you make decisions. And that's no different than with ETFs, right? But things move very, very quickly in crypto, maybe faster than ETFs, but ETFs are moving pretty quickly these days as well. The thing about ETFs versus crypto is things have gone through the SEC in ETFs, so the disclosure should be better, or at least it should be expected to be better. I think a lot of people are very excited around blockchain and crypto these days because the rules are going to be established better and the framework is going to be established better than in the past. And that will open up a lot of information for people to make maybe, I think, probably more informed decisions. And I'm excited about that. But you know what? At the end of the day, this is all about risk management. So I would really, really highly encourage everybody. Sounds like I'm preaching, size their risk, right? If they get it right, take some off the, take some profits off, right? And then think why they made the right decisions. Don't just, it's not a casino because you're going to lose if it's a casino, right? Don't play with the house's rules. So be careful.
So what is your like step-by-step process? I don't know if step-by-step is the right way
There's steps.
terminology
There's
to
steps.
because I know when you're looking at a company, there's fundamentals. You look at fundamentals. Maybe you do like you try to find their intrinsic value, and there's these things you can look at. Different financial metrics. So what is your? How can you really, I don't know, value a cryptocurrency?
I'm not going to answer that question in the way you phrased it because I don't know that you can really value a cryptocurrency. Um, I know that Bitcoin, which is a blockchain, which people, look at it as a cryptocurrency, um, value it, as a store of value versus inflation because of supply and demand. Um, it's very straightforward, but on the same token, just to have fun with words, a lot of people are struggling with why Bitcoin today on February 4th isn't trading higher than it is versus their expectations. Because what do we know? We know that Bitcoin miners, for the most part, that are public, are hodling their Bitcoin. We know that there isn't a lot of Bitcoin that's being created today because of the formula. And we know that there's seems to be a lot of buying, right? So why shouldn't the price be higher? Sometimes you have to be patient on things. Everybody wants price action to move in their timeline. It just never works that way. It would be my answer. As far as like process and looking at companies, that's something I'm more comfortable speaking about because we do have processes around that. And that has to do with analyzing the balance sheet, understanding the cultures of companies, um, trying to assess why they're valued versus their peers, understanding cash flow, um, and their business plan to grow. Some of this takes experience. Um, and then you also have to understand how market dynamics work. We've got one stock, frankly, that is down 12% today, and another stock that is up 30% today.
I saw Palantir went up 23% or something.
So here's the question, right? Is it really that better a company today versus yesterday because of the results that they reported? Or is it just about confidence and excitement? And, does one sit back and, think through how their business has been built and what decisions were made to deliver great results, right? So it's easier said than done, but it's always better to buy low and sell higher.
I mean, yeah, I think you definitely touched on something that was really important. I think that's the market sentiment. Because like you said, Palantir a day ago might not have been any better than it is today, but the stock price has shot up 23%. So you guys, what I'm hearing is you guys really also take into account the market confidence, and how the company can present itself as being the next big thing, and buy low, sell high, right?
Yeah, but just point of clarification, I wasn't referencing Palantir. I'm not
Yeah.
involved in that
It
company,
was just an example, but
but
just
it's a
the
great
general market.
example for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, no, for sure, great example. And then the other question ends up being, because we're talking about ETFs here, you know, are you better off buying a single stock or being in the right industry? I mean, we know security is an industry that has maybe challenges, but it's necessary today, right? You have to have wonderful security on everything you do as a company, right? So that business growth is going to be there, right? I tend to like being in those areas where I know the trajectory is strong on a long-term basis versus old industries that maybe are cheap because of their decline in their necessity. But that's just the way I am. It goes back to people always thinking through how structure matters and how they think, right? Um, do you want to work for a big company or a little company, right? Are you really excited around a company like Palantir, who's just right on the cutting edge of things?
See. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Weisskopf, ETF professor, senior portfolio manager at Tidal. Thank you.